So without any further ado, here's Tom.
Thank you, Tad. This is my thing. I take pictures of my audience now. Did I get the? Yeah. This camera is older than me. Everything I have is, my jacket is older than me. My pen is older than me. My watch. And you know my ideology is. It is wonderful to be back here in Wichita. I love this bookstore. And the way I thought I'd start off the discussion tonight is by talking about the always vexing matter of social class, which Tad alluded to a little bit. Back in 1980, when the great conservative revolution was just getting underway, you still used to hear these sort of comforting descriptions of our country as an affluent society. Remember that phrase? You used to hear that a lot. An affluent society. It was a middle-class land where there was this sort of rough equality of condition. Today, nobody talks about shared affluence as being the basic American characteristic. Instead, they tell us that what distinguishes us among the nations of the world is our tolerance for and our acceptance of great extremes of wealth and poverty. That's what makes us who we are. That's what makes America unique among the nations, and so, miraculously profitable. We're on our way to the 19th century again. It's not the country that you and I grew up in. Now, generally speaking, conservatives regard class as an unacceptable mode of analysis when the subject is economics. In fact, I was on a TV show about an hour ago in which the guy that I was supposed to be debating said that to talk about class in the way I was talking about it was neo-Marxist, which I guess means it's unacceptable. I always thought it was all American. I always thought it was a kind of a Kansas thing to do. But anyhow, when you talk about class in a different way, when you define class as a matter of culture, suddenly Republicans they love it. Then class becomes a wonderful thing, and they love to talk about it then. In fact, it becomes for conservatives the very blood and bone of public discourse. And from George Wallace in the 60s to George W. Bush in our own day, a class-based backlash against the perceived arrogance of liberalism has been conservatism's most powerful weapon. And this sensibility was perfectly caught during the campaign, in my opinion, by Gary Bauer. You all know who ran for president in 2000. An interesting guy, the son of a janitor, and which is always mentioned, he has working class roots. And when the New York Times asked him to explain the continuing power of the culture wars sometime in the summer of 2004, here's what he said. And I thought this was very telling. He said, "Joe Sixpack doesn't understand why the world and his culture are changing and why he doesn't have a say in it." These were powerful words. This is the sort of thing that would once have been the slogan of, the fighting egalitarian left. It used to be people like me that talked that way. And now it's Gary Bauer. It's conservatives that claim to be fighting for the little guy. In 2004, George W. Bush carried the vote of the white working class by a robust, almost Rooseveltian 23 percentage points. And then on the morning after the election, the nation's liberals were astonished to hear that, according to exit polls, moral values outranked all other issues in determining voters' choices. Now, later on that same day, this is what blew my mind. The same day that poll came out, and my phone started ringing because all of a sudden everybody wanted to know what's the matter with Kansas. But on that same day, Bush gave the first speech of his second term and set out his legislative objectives. And guess what? Making America a more moral country was not one of them. Instead, his goals were strictly economic, and they had precious little to do with helping out those working class people that had voted for him. He would privatize Social Security once and for all, he said, and he would reform the federal tax code. And you get one guess as to what he meant by reform. How are you doing?
Just fine.
Okay, and what's your name? Okay. The ending is very depressing, and I'm sorry about that. It's the most depressing 3 paragraphs I ever wrote in my life. I still, when I read them, I get sad. But that's how I feel about it. So.